Imagine a single flower, delicate and unassuming, toppling the mightiest empire on earth, not with weapons or wars, but with the seductive haze of its smoke. This is the true story of how opium unraveled China's Qing dynasty.
Picture ruling the world's richest empire, holding a third of global wealth, with foreign rulers begging to trade, only to see it crumble from one plant. Not war, not weapons, but a flower. A single bloom powerful enough to bring an entire civilization to its knees. This isn't fantasy. This is the story of how opium destroyed China's greatest empire. In the 1700s, China was the undisputed economic superpower of the world. European monarchs were desperate to get Chinese goods. But the Chinese emperor basically yawned and said, "We don't need anything you barbarians make." Fast forward just 100 years, and China was carved up by foreign powers. Millions of its people were addicted to drugs, and its 2,000-year-old imperial system was crumbling. This is how it happened. Let's return to Qing Dynasty China. So get comfortable. This tale is worth it. The year, 1800. Dawn breaks over Canton Harbor. In your rented waterfront room, you wake to darkness, the air thick with salt, spices, and the press of humanity drifting through the window. Outside, merchants shout, wood creaks, metal clangs as ships unload treasures from across the globe. You lie on a hard wooden platform, humidity pressing in, back aching. This is Canton, the only Chinese port open to foreigners, and right now, the richest, busiest trade hub on Earth. You might think Europe was richest then, your textbook said so, but nope. In 1800, China produced over 1/3 of the world's goods. Imagine a single nation matching today's US, Japan, and Germany combined into one superpower. That's how dominant China's economy truly was. European merchants were literally begging to be allowed to trade with China. And China's response? Basically, yeah, we're good. Thanks. The Chinese emperor viewed the Western kingdoms as barbarian states with nothing of value to offer the Middle Kingdom. What about inventions? From China's view, they'd already created everything worth making: paper, printing, gunpowder, compass. Porcelain so delicate it was translucent. Silk so prized European nobles went broke chasing it. The world's most desired treasures, all Chinese in origin. When foreign merchants arrived in Canton, they weren't treated as equals. They were barely tolerated, and the trading system was set up to keep it that way. Listen up. Here's how this works. A local official explains as you watch Western merchants arrive. Foreigners can only trade in Canton, nowhere else in our vast empire. They can only live in these specific buildings outside the city walls called factories. Not actual factories, but trading houses. They cannot bring their wives or families. They cannot learn Chinese. They cannot travel into the Chinese interior. And most importantly, they can only trade through the approved Chinese merchants, known as the Hong merchants. The strongest of the Hong merchants is Haokua, and he isn't just rich, he's the richest man alive. His fortune was about $26 million, which may sound small now, but in today's terms it equals multiple billions. In 1800s Canton, his wealth and power dwarfed nearly everyone on Earth. The dude literally had rooms filled with silver. During a fire in 1822, witnesses described rivers of silver flowing through the streets as Haokua's vaults melted in the flames. You're at the harbor watching a British East India Company ship unload, and you spot Haokua dressed in elegant silk robes directing his army of clerks and assistants. His hands are clasped behind his back as he watches crates of silver being carried off the ship. That's how the trade works, whispers a merchant standing next to you. We bring silver. They give us tea, silk, and porcelain. The system looks simple. Europeans crave Chinese luxuries, especially England's tea obsession, but China refuses their goods, demanding silver instead. Soon Western treasuries bleed dry. We can't keep shipping silver to China. A merchant laments. England's running out of the bloody stuff. You can see the frustration on the faces of the British traders. They're making money selling Chinese goods back home, but the trade imbalance is unsustainable. They need something the Chinese will buy. And that's where our story really begins. Because the British found something that would turn this entire system upside down. Opium. You see, an unusual ship anchored in the harbor, flying no flags. The local Chinese seem to be avoiding it. Yet small boats occasionally slip out to it under cover of darkness. Turkish and Indian opium, the merchant explains. Technically illegal in China, but he shrugs. Opium wasn't new in China. It had long been used as medicine in drinks or tinctures. But Europeans changed everything by introducing smoking. Come on, the merchant says, guiding you through crowded streets to a plain building near the waterfront, where a darker story begins. Inside, smoke hangs heavy. Men recline on wooden platforms as attendants ready ornate pipes with metal bowls. A dark opium ball bubbles over flame, then drops into place. 1 puff, troubles fade. 2, you're floating. 3, paradise. The merchant says as dazed eyes glaze in the haze. What you're witnessing is the beginning of something catastrophic. At this moment, opium is still primarily smoked by the wealthy elite, government officials, rich merchants, men of leisure. It's a luxury drug, a status symbol. But that's about to change. The merchant leans in closer. The British East India Company now runs vast opium plantations in Bengal, shipping thousands of chests yearly. Each chest holds 140 pounds. By 1800, some 4,500 chests, 630,000 pounds, poured into China, flooding the market. And demand wasn't shrinking. It was only climbing higher. Morning at the harbor is chaos. Silver flows in, luxuries flow out, trade thriving yet fragile. Amid the bustle, a cluster of British merchants speaks in hushed tones. You spot one. William Jardine, once a ship's surgeon, now a calculating trader with eyes set on fortune. Beside him stands James Matheson, his partner. Together, they'll found Jardine Matheson and Company, a drug empire. The Chinese confine us to Canton, Jardine says, but with swift clippers, we can land opium anywhere along the coast. A plan for fortune and disaster takes shape. You're witnessing the planning of what would become the most successful drug smuggling enterprise in history. And the Chinese government has no idea what's coming. Back in the trading factory, you observe the complex dance of commerce. China's Hong merchants sit in a perilous spot, immensely wealthy yet trapped between imperial demands and foreign traders. They're held accountable for outsiders' conduct, tasked with enforcing taxes and regulations, balancing profit with the constant risk of imperial wrath. Hao Kuai is clever, someone comments. He's investing much of his fortune overseas through his American partners. He doesn't trust the imperial officials not to seize it. Smart move on his part, because the system that's made him the richest man on earth is about to come crashing down. That evening, you're welcome to a rare banquet at Hao Kuai's mansion, an honor seldom granted to foreigners. The estate dazzles with lush gardens, priceless antiques, and endless courses of exotic dishes. For hours, luxury and refinement showcase the vast wealth of Canton's richest merchant. In the bustling tea house near the waterfront, conversations buzzed as patrons sipped their hot brews. Among the mingling locals and foreign merchants, the atmosphere was thick with tension. In one corner, 2 Chinese scholars debated the grim situation with fervor. The barbarians bring poison and take our silver, one scolded vehemently. His companion depicted a despairing picture, sharing his own experience. When I was in Jiangsu, even my superiors smoked opium. How can we enforce the law when enforcers themselves are addicts? This crisis had spiraled beyond a mere trade issue. Domestically, fields in rural parts of China began cultivating poppies. It signaled the infiltration of the opium economy into Chinese society, a society already witnessing domestic production, compounding the menace of imported opium. Nearby, a group of British merchants raised their glasses, oblivious to the havoc their trade caused. They argued that demand drove the trade, thus justifying their profiteering off human destruction. The hypocrisy was glaring. In Britain, opium was restricted to medical use, but profits justified its export to China, where opium dens thrived. As dusk descended, a routine unfolded along the waterfront. Smuggling boats, laden with goods, headed into the abyss. "Aren't they afraid of the patrols?" a traveler inquired, amused by the blatant smuggling. "They pay the patrols," replied a porter nonchalantly, "and simply wait out the honest shifts." This was the grim cycle fueling Canton's economy. The growing desperation in the air was palpable. An imperial edict sought to end the trade, but enforcing it threatened half the populace to withdrawal and left officials wrestling with plummeting tax revenues due to the silver drain. Amidst this chaos, a Western doctor treated opium addicts in a small clinic, describing the harrowing effects of addiction. The narrative took a pivotal turn in the spring of 1839. Commissioner Lin Zexu arrived with a mandate from the emperor: eradicate the opium trade at whatever cost. As his procession moved through the streets of Canton, the city buzzed with anticipation and dread. Unlike previous officials easily swayed by bribes, Lin was incorruptible. Within days, he shut opium dens, detained dealers, and demanded the surrender of the foreign traders' opium stockpiles. Caught in Lin's uncompromising resolve, the foreign traders were flabbergasted when he ordered the execution of a major dealer publicly. Their lucrative yet destructive venture had met an unexpected force. Lin issued a watershed ultimatum: all opium to be surrendered within 3 days. This unyielding stance, backed by Chinese troops surrounding the factories, shook the foreign community. The order wasn't an idle threat. Lin backed it by cutting off resources, pushing traders into a corner. The treasury is emptied to make the first payment. Taxes are raised in an already weary and impoverished nation. Wealthy families are pressured to donate to the cause of national salvation. Even the emperor's own reserves are not spared. The payment is made, but the cost is severe. Economic strains are not the only burden. The treaty also opens the floodgates for opium, legitimizing the trade British merchants have long run illegally. Overnight, official opium dens appear in port cities. The social impact is immediate and devastating. Families once proud and prosperous find themselves selling heirlooms, even daughters, to feed the opium habit of a single member. Farmers neglect their fields for the haze of pipe. Officials at every level succumb, their judgment clouded by addiction. The opium dens become sordid symbols of China's slide. Once homes to dignified tea ceremonies and scholarly debate, establishments now echo with the coughs and whispers of addicts, figures slumped in stupor. The drug is in every city, smuggled up rivers, hidden in bales of wool and grain. Observing from afar, Western powers see the ongoing humiliation but focus on profits, seeing themselves as merchants rather than invaders. Investment flows in, foreign goods flood the markets, and gradual westernization begins to change Chinese cities. In the countryside, far from treaty ports like Hong Kong and Shanghai, life remains untouched. Farmers rise at dawn, rice fields mirror the sky, but news of defeats and humiliation slips through, whispered by passing peddlers and officials. Hong merchants scatter like crows. One old farmer tells another, "What good is silver if all roads lead to hell?" China's intellectuals are caught between longing for tradition and a compelling urge to adapt. Debates rage in court and universities. Is the way forward one of reform, abandoning thousands of years of culture for a foreign model, or a return to Confucian ideals, amending flaws from within? In quick time, the First Opium War is seen as a harsh lesson, stark evidence of where complacency and arrogance might lead. It inspires some to call for change. For others, it is simply encouragement to hold on more tightly to the past. An old official remarks over dinner, "The barbarians have taught us something, that nothing is sacred if not defended." He knows the world has forever altered, yet there remains in him, as in many, hope that this might not yet be a final act, but a beginning of sorts, a moment for reflection and transformation. History courses onward. New alliances might form, new battles waged, even victories grasped. But you, witness to its turmoil and turning points, are left pondering which path China might tread. Within weeks of the treaty signing, various factions jostle for power. Reformists demand education revamps, drawing on Western science. Conservatives double down, consulting Qing and conferring with ancestral spirits. The country balances on a precipice, its fate uncertain, shadowed by its Opium War scars and limping toward the modernity thrust upon it. Yet as the sun sets over the eastern hills, igniting the sky with crimson, who's to say which dreams might awaken anew, or which long-shuttered doors might swing ajar, creaking open to unheard futures? These are the whispers the world must wait to hear. For with every ending, another beginning lingers on the horizon. As tempers flare, the situation becomes a new flashpoint. The British see it as a direct challenge to their perceived extraterritorial rights and protection over vessels linked to their flag, regardless of ownership. Downing Street is incensed, finding an excuse to renew hostilities. Thus begins the Second Opium War, which furthers the legacy of conflict and exploitation. The Second Opium War, spanning from 1856 to 1860, results in yet another set of humiliating treaties for China. The Treaty of Nanjing in 1858 compels China to open even more ports to foreign trade, grants the right for Western powers to establish embassies in Beijing, and continues the opium trade without restriction. The subsequent Convention of Peking in 1860 further solidifies these terms, ceding the Kowloon Peninsula to Britain and establishing new conditions for France and Russia. The relentless cycle of poverty, addiction, and foreign pressure directs China into a period of unprecedented challenges. Social structures buckle under the weight of external aggressions, while internal rebellions reflect a society seeking equilibrium amidst displacement. Land once fertile with promise is now ravaged by poppy cultivation, leaving traditional agriculture to languish. In the face of these struggles, reform seems the only possible salvation. A group of scholars and officials push for self-strengthening, advocating for China's adoption of Western technology and military strategies while maintaining cultural essence. Figures like Li Hongzhang bring industrialization and modern armament to the forefront. Yet this transformative process is mired by resistance from traditionalists and lack of imperial initiative. Meanwhile, ordinary lives continue to bear the brunt of these upheavals. Families who once tilled soil with pride now face dislocation due to opium-driven policies. Rivers transporting goods across the empire now carry more than silk or tea. They're conduits for human misery, choked by addiction and exploitation. In the opium-addled alleys of burgeoning treaty ports, dreams of prosperity fade into the smoke-filled haze. The vibrancy of China's culture becomes overshadowed by the sorrows knit into the fabric of industrial endeavor, creating a contrasting landscape of opulent foreigners and despondent local citizens. The British and other imperial powers, their ambitions furthered by unyielding treaties, become fixtures in the socio-political theater of China. Their presence irks and invites new dynamics, setting the stage for future confrontations and aspirations for sovereignty among the Chinese populace. This historical turmoil lays the groundwork for a new era, a China determined to reconcile its cultural heritage with the pressing demands of modernization and international standing. The narrative arc from the First Opium War to the eventual emergence of a republic embodies a nation grappling with global reckoning. Away, how naive we were. He shakes his head, pausing to watch the bustling street outside. Yesterday, I saw a young boy in opium stupor lying in an alley. His eyes were glazed, and he looked barely alive. I placed a coin in his hand. Perhaps he'll spend it on more opium. In my youth, such a sight would have been unthinkable. Now it's our reality. He leans closer, lowering his voice as if to share confidence. We're like that boy, don't you see? Lost in a dream, unable to wake ourselves. Europe changed everything, forced us into the modern world. Our old ways are gone, crumbling like the walls of a forgotten palace. Now I must find a new way or be swallowed whole. You nod, seeing his point. In your travels, you hear more conversations like this, filled with introspection and desperation. But there's also hope, a kernel of determination in the hearts of a beleaguered people. 1911 arrives, and with it profound change. In October, revolution shakes China to its foundations. The Wuchang uprising triggers a nationwide revolt, fueled by years of discontent and a hunger for change. Within months, the Qing Dynasty falls, replaced by a new republic. You stand with the crowd in Beijing as Emperor Pu abdicates the throne, the last monarch of a dynasty that stretches back centuries. People cheer and cheer again, tears flowing freely in hope for a new beginning. An old man beside you, visibly moved, whispers the same words that echoed in meetings and tea houses across the land. Perhaps now, he says, we will reclaim what was lost. But rebuilding is not easy. The new Republic of China is beset by internal strife, warlord factions, and foreign pressures. Yet it is also animated by a sense of possibility, a resurgence of innovation and indigenous reform. As you prepare to leave the turbulent land, back on the Shanghai Bund, looking out over the river where ships come and go, you sense that despite the turmoil, a corner has been turned. A Chinese traveler nearby, perhaps one of the students recently returned from overseas studies, stands observing the scene. We have a long way to go, he remarks, eyes fervent with determination. Yes, you reply, but you're awake now, amidst dreams. No more stagnation, no more slumber. Together, the people, both young and old, once trapped and embittered by their narcotic dreams, begin forging their great, painful pathway to modernity. And although the path ahead teems with challenges, economic hardship, political upheaval, external adversities, the spirit of progress and self-determination stirs in the hearts of countless Chinese citizens. Together, they step forward, moving not just into a new century, but toward reclaiming both identity and dignity, inch by painful inch.